Hi everyone, and welcome to a brief video where I wanted to talk about Xenonauts and OpenXCOM. As you might or might not know, Xenonauts 2 is getting a 1.0 release on April the 2nd, therefore coming out of early access. And for a little bit of context, if you've never heard of Xenonauts, Xenonauts was meant to be a spiritual successor to the original XCOM games from the 90s, but Xenonauts 2 is basically a reimagining of the original Xenonauts, so in a sense, it's the same game. It's basically meant to be a better version of the first game. On the other hand, OpenXCOM, if you never heard of it, it's an open source engine recreation of the classic 90s XCOM games. It allows it to run natively on modern operating systems and PCs. It has plenty of bug fixes, high-resolution support, a lot of modern quality-of-life features, and modding support, extensive modding support. So with that introduction, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I think OpenXCOM is a better game than Xenonauts. Now, I'm not here to preach some kind of objective truth or anything like that. This is basically just my opinion, in case that wasn't clear. But I wanted to share some of my reasons behind it. Because I do play a lot of modern XCOM by Firaxis, I play quite a lot of OG XCOM in form of OpenXCOM, so inevitably I will get a lot of questions about the Xenonauts 2, and in this video I wanted to preemptively answer some of those questions. So there are actually many small reasons why I think OpenXCOM is a better game than Xenonauts. A lot of them have to do with various quality of life improvements, and there are many of them. I could probably sit here for the next few hours talking just about various quality of life improvements that OpenXCOM has. I could also talk a lot about the modding scene around OpenXCOM, which is really impressive. There are some truly impressive total conversion mods for OpenXCOM, as well as overhaul mods. But ultimately, while all of the OpenXCOM related reasons are very important for me, my actual biggest reason has nothing to do with OpenXCOM itself, and everything to do with the actual original game and the way one system in particular was designed. So what I'm actually referring to here is the core gameplay of XCOM, core tactical gameplay, and the single most important element of it, which is shooting your enemies. So as you might or might not know, the original XCOM, the one from 1994, had a pretty sophisticated ballistic projectile simulation where it actually mattered what your position was relative to your target, what the distance was, how obscure the target was, and more. And in OpenXCOM, there is actually a feature where you can take a screenshot from the shooter's point of view, and you can actually see what the game sees, as in how much of the target is actually visible, how many objects there are on the way that are obscuring the target, and all of that factored into your actual hit chance. Now, you are never actually told what your hit chance is in the OG XCOM, you are just told what your soldier's accuracy is with that particular weapon and that particular shot type. But you can obviously see the distance between you and the target, how many objects there might be in the way, and how visible the target is. Now, in Xenonauts 2, it does matter whether there are objects in the way obscuring your shot. However, it does not have the same relatively sophisticated projectile simulation system that the OG XCOM does. And one of the biggest direct consequences of this system in the original XCOMs was that you essentially could not miss from point-blank range. Now, obviously, all of this applies both to you and your enemies. But this system and its existence is one of the biggest reasons why I keep going back to the OG XCOMs. In Xenonauts 2, on the other hand, you absolutely can miss from point-blank range, and I even have footage of that right here. But in the original XCOM, in a situation, for example, like this, where I have an enemy in point-blank range, I am basically guaranteed to hit. If I use auto-shot, even though my accuracy with this is 27%, it is impossible to miss because of how the projectiles are simulated. So if I do this, I am guaranteed to hit this guy. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. Here's a tactical situation we're in, and we have two large targets inside this building, on the left and on the right. I have a weapon, in this case with 39% accuracy, with a snapshot. And I can still take that snapshot. However, this is not my true chance to hit. I can actually take a screenshot from first-person perspective, and now I will show you what the game actually sees when I take a shot. This is not going to be like what you're seeing right now. So here's what the game is actually seeing when I take this shot. The purple object in here is my enemy. Everything green are objects that are potentially obstructing my shot. So I can see the enemies partially obstructed by these boxes in the way, and I can see exactly how. And here's the second enemy on the left. You can also see that the second enemy is partially obstructed by the boxes. And this can get fairly sophisticated. This is a fairly simple example of this. So this system specifically is one of the biggest reasons why I keep going back to the original XCOMs, especially with the OpenXCOM existing. OpenXCOM is really impressive, and the modding scene around it is also equally impressive. I just do appreciate the complexity of a system that was built in 1994, over 30 years ago. Now, some of the modern games make up for the lack of complexity with clarity. But with the Xenonauts specifically, I find that the system is both not as sophisticated, but at the same time, it's not very clear either. But beyond that, OpenXCOM Extended actually adds several gameplay features that I find to be really good and well-balanced. One of the biggest examples of this is sprinting, where you make use of the energy stat that was not super useful 99% of the time originally, but with sprinting specifically, it makes it way more useful, and sprinting itself is very well balanced. For example, right here, if I don't sprint, my guy from inside the Sky Ranger can't quite make it into this spot inside the building, but if I sprint, like this, I can do it. But look at what happens with my energy when I do that. I will use quite a lot of it, and it will only partially recover at the end of my turn. So if you sprint too much, it's very, very easy to run out of energy, and then once you run out of energy, you simply cannot move anymore. Check out how much energy this person has left, and how much energy this guy has after sprinting. So this is a very well-made addition that's included in OpenXCOM Extended, and that's just one example. I also like the fact that anytime I want, I can look at some very detailed information regarding any weapon or piece of equipment, even inside the tactical mission. So for example, I can look at the laser rifle, then I can go into info, which will give me more detailed information, and then I can get even more information, including basically everything about this weapon, which gives you multiple pages of stuff. So I find that this to be very useful. So as somebody who likes having information in strategy games and tactical games, I find that this feature to be very, very useful. I'm a big fan anyway. I certainly never liked obscurity in the strategy games specifically. And there's a lot of non-obvious information often included there. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I just wanted to talk about this for a bit, and now I have. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.